Well, bon bini beer friends, which means welcome in Papiamentu. So if you saw my last video, I told you that this video right now is going to be about our visit to Curaçao. So I'm really excited to tell you about everything that we did there. But for those of you who are new here to my channel, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Tammy. I live in a small town outside of Windsor, Canada, so basically just across the river from Detroit. And I am a brewer and a winemaker, and I love talking about beer. I love teaching about beer. I love drinking beer. I love traveling and trying new beers and breweries. So that's kind of what this channel is about. Also, I'm studying for my Certified Cicerone exam, which is level 2 of the Cicerone program. That's kind of why I started this channel, was just review my beer knowledge and maybe help other people that are new to beer or studying as well. So anyway, we just did a cruise though with my whole family. So I sort of took a step back from the beer styles for a bit, just so I could talk about the beer that we found while we were on vacation. And it's April in Canada and it's actually nice out today. It's probably in the 50s. So I wanted to sit outside, but I live on kind of a busy street, so hopefully the background noise isn't too distracting. So like I did last time, I'm trying to be better because I like to ramble. I've got an outline of what I want to talk about, so I don't just make all these side quests. Yeah, and I also have a really cool interview that's going to be later in the video, so lots to talk about. So yeah, Curaçao, one of the ABC islands, like I talked about in my last video. It's a chain of Dutch islands in the Southern Caribbean, and they're actually very close to Venezuela, and they're considered Dutch, but they're also autonomous. So they have their own money, they have their own language, which is what I welcomed you with. It's called Papiamentu in Curaçao. In Aruba, it's Papiamento. Yeah, like a really neat mix of culture and history. So just a really interesting place to visit. Obviously beaches, things like that. So I didn't do any beaches on this trip because it was all about beer. We only had about like 6 hours, maybe 7 hours in port, which sounds like all day, but when you think about having to get somewhere and having to travel and things like that, it's not a lot of time. Plus we were there on a Sunday, which was a bummer because a lot of things didn't open until later. The buses were running on a weekend schedule, so just a lot of things kind of slowed it down a bit. However, I was prepared for this before we got there because I had done some research on the area. So I knew that there was a really cool fort in the port area, plus Willemstad, which is the capital of Curaçao, is known for a lot of street art. And since my husband is an artist, I thought, you know, we could spend some time walking around there while we were waiting for our bus and things like that. So we walked through the port area. It's called Riff Fort. So you walk down along the water and then you come to this port, or this fort, and it was an actual fort that was in use, you know, hundreds of years ago. But now they've sort of turned it into more of like the touristy port area. So there's like some restaurants and shops and things like that, and you can go upstairs and walk around. It's got a really nice view. So we did that. Again, nothing was open yet because it was 9 a.m. at this point. So what we did next was we crossed over. They have a bridge called the Queen Emma Bridge, and it's really cool. I'm going to put up a video for you to watch, but basically it's not just a floating bridge, it's like a moving bridge. So the supports underneath the bridge itself are like little boats. And so if another ship has to come through and like cross by, the bridge will swing all the way open and then the ships can go back and forth and then it closes again. So it's kind of interesting because it's if you're on the bridge while it's moving, you're on the bridge until it closes again. So like that's it. And if you are not on the bridge, but you need to go from one side to the other, they actually have like a little ferry that will take you back and forth. So you're not just trapped while it's moving back and forth. And it doesn't take that long, but it's kind of interesting to watch. And we did not get stuck on the bridge as it was moving, thankfully, but it's really cool to see. So we crossed over the bridge to like another part of the old town, and we walked around for a while and saw a lot of the street art, and really cool. It's not like just regular graffiti or things like that. A lot of it has been commissioned, and they're trying to, promote up and coming artists and promote like the culture and the history of the island. So it was really cool, really cool. I would say if you're there in Willemstad, definitely take some time to walk around the downtown area and see some of that art. So as I had done my research the day before in Aruba, I knew that we could take a bus to where we were going, and where we were going was a small craft brewery owned by someone that I had connected with before we left on the trip. And we had made plans to meet at a certain time, and I knew the bus would get us there at a certain time. So I knew where the bus stop was. I knew what stop we needed to get off at. I knew how much it cost. I had done all this research. I even had downloaded the app so I could get real-time updates. So we get to the bus stop, like early. We're waiting. We don't see a bus. I see a bus labeled AB, but we actually need bus BC. So we're waiting. All these other buses are leaving. And I'm like, well, I don't know. So as buses started pulling up, I was asking the bus drivers as they got off, what the deal was. And, I tried my best with my Spanish. Wasn't that helpful, but basically one of the bus drivers said, oh, the bus is running late. And I've been to the Caribbean before, and I know there's this concept of island time, but all the buses that we had seen that morning were pretty on time. So we waited some more. We waited, another 10, 15 minutes. And then I finally asked a different bus driver, and he said, oh, you needed that AB bus instead of BC. On the weekend, it's different. There's only one. So I was like, great, we have missed our bus. So we're sitting there, and I'm trying to figure out what we're gonna do, because we're supposed to meet Jon at a certain time. There's no other bus. The next bus would have been like an hour. I don't know if we should walk all the way back to town and get a taxi and pay like 5 times as much. I was like, what do we do? So the bus driver that had told us the situation, that we had missed our bus, he comes back and he says, I have to go to the airport to do my next pickup, but where you're going is on the way, so just get on the bus and I'll take you. So this good heaven sent Samaritan offered to just drive us, and we were the only people on the bus. I asked him when we got on, how much should we pay you? And he was like, just get on, don't worry about it. We ended up giving him, I think, like $15, because we wanted to give him a tip too. But having that peace of mind, but also door-to-door service, I think was worth the $15 for both of us. So always just check the schedules, ask questions if you're not sure. Check, ask. So we get to where we're going, which is a small microbrewery called, and I said this wrong in my first video a few weeks ago, Tiki Mas Serbes. Basically, he started in 2020, because that was a great year for all of us to be doing all sorts of new things. And he's got a smaller system, but a lot of space. So he's got some new and pretty nice used equipment that's not quite hooked up and online yet. But when he does, he's gonna have more space to up his brewing capacity. So I think that'll be really exciting. And he's also got some space right now that will eventually be more of a tasting room. So right now it's kind of just come in, buy your bottles and go. And there is a really small seating area that you can sit, but it's limited. So a lot of people tend to just get it and go. What I was really excited about was I didn't really know 100% what kind of beers he made until we got there, but he told me that he makes beers that he likes, which is what I think all brewers want to do. So I was really glad to find that he and I like the same kinds of beer. So this is kind of a short list of what he's got. A couple of IPAs, a stout, a sour, a pale ale, a session. We were able to try the IPA, the Lush, I believe, or no, the Session, and then I believe the Victory. So we had a few different beers, and I will say that during our entire trip, of all the different places we went and all the beers we tried, he had the best beer. It was made well. He had a really great choice of hops for his IPAs. Really clean, like just no faults, like just really, really great. So I was really, really happy with that. It was also nice of him because I had messaged him maybe a month before we left for our trip, and I asked about maybe getting together, but we were going to be there on a Sunday. And so he very graciously still offered to meet us on a Sunday, even though it was his day off and it's like family day there. And he sat with us for a few hours, and and we talked, because I told him, we're sort of interested in maybe opening our own brewery one day, maybe in the Caribbean. So we want to, just kind of see what it's like here. Like, what's the vibe like? What's the scene? Are people interested? Do they understand what you're doing? What you're trying to do? So we spent a lot of time chatting with him. And then also awesome, we told him about our bus snafu, and he offered to drive us back to town so we didn't have to worry about getting a bus going the other way. So I'm going to throw it to the interview that I did with Jon. And again, major props to Jon, because I totally sprang it upon him last minute. I said, hey, I have a YouTube channel. I have 11 subscribers now. Thanks, guys and gals. And I said I would love to do an interview. So he threw on a shirt from his brewery, and he sat and he chatted with us. And because we'd already had a couple beers, my brain did not think to get up my microphone, so hopefully it's not too muffled. So here's what he had to say about his brewery.
Okay.
How do you say the name of your brewery, and where did it come from?
Tiki Mas Serbes is Papimento for a little more beer.
Oh, okay.
It's pronounced Tiki Mas Serbes, Serbes being beer, Tiki Mas a little more. When we first started, I spent forever trying to think of a name. We had many different iterations, many different names. They were all terrible. And my girlfriend said, hey, look, maybe you should call it Tiki Mas Serbes. Before I was doing this, we had a home bar, which was like a tiki bar, and that was called Tiki Mas a little more. And then sometimes on the weekends we'd host, make cocktails for people, and they'd come around and barbecue. And so she was like, maybe it should just become an extension of that, and we call it Tiki Mas Serbes. And I said, this is a terrible idea, and spent another 6 months trying to find a name. And then a good friend of mine said, hey, you should call it Tiki Mas Serbes. And I went home and I said, hey, so said you should call it Tiki Mas Serbes, at which point my girlfriend walked out of the room.
I was going to say, we've had those conversations.
God damn it! We've already talked about this. So that's how the name came about.
Cool. How would you describe Papimento in general? Because it's like I see signs in Dutch, but then people are almost speaking Spanish, and then...
Yeah, so Papimento is a mixture of lots of different languages. So back in the day, Curaçao, Aruba, and Bonaire was one of the places where the Dutch went with their slaves. And the slaves came from Africa, so there's a lot of different African dialects being spoken. And Curaçao also used to be a Portuguese, a Spanish, and an English island in its history. And so a lot of different people came together here. So there's a big Dutch influence, obviously. If you look at some of the buildings, there's a bit of Portuguese, there's a lot of Spanish from South America. Venezuela, on a clear day you can see. It's really not that far. There's some English, but a lot less in the language. But predominantly Portuguese, Spanish, there's a bit of French in there. Obviously Creole, African, and then Dutch as well.
Is this a language then that people learn in school, or it's just okay, wow.
Yeah, and it's more of a spoken language than a written language. So it doesn't. It sounds maybe really weird. There are rules to the language, but spelling is very free. It's more of phonetic.
Yeah, okay.
That's what I meant. It's more of like a phonetic language than an actual hard and fast rule. So, for instance, you will see at some places along the road you can get like coconuts or like a snack, and you can get different drinks and stuff, and it will say frio, F-R-I-U, or F-R-I-U-W, because that's how you say it, frio.
Okay.
You end with like a more W sound.
Okay.
So, but it's the same word, but yeah, it's different. It's spelled different. There's lots of words like that.
Yeah.
It gets really confusing. So, yeah, there's a lot of different ways. A lot of locals will speak like 3 or 4 languages. Supplemental Spanish, Dutch, usually, and English, or something else. Yeah.
And they learn that in school?
A bit, yeah.
Wow.
There's a big Spanish population here as well because of the proximity to South America, and there's a big Portuguese population here too. So when the refinery used to be owned by Shell, they brought a lot of Portuguese people over, and then when Shell was sold and went away, I should say, and the refinery got taken over by other things, a lot of Portuguese opened supermarkets. So Esperança, Portuguese supermarket, Centrum, Portuguese supermarket, Vreugde Hills, Portuguese supermarket, Goisco, all the big ones.
Okay.
And a lot of them were like farmers, so working on the land, fruits and vegetables and that kind of stuff. It's a lot of like garden centres, kind of. They've turned that business into garden centres, but also a lot of families still do the fruits and that kind of stuff that they grow local. They're mainly Portuguese.
Okay.
I've had many fun conversations with people. So the last one I had was a three-way conversation. I'm speaking English to someone, they're speaking Papiamento to the other person, and the other person I'm speaking to with Portuguese. And we can all pretty much understand what was going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of fun conversations.
That reminds me of Quebec. I don't know. What else do you want to share about?
Come and visit.
Beer, yeah. Do you have, I mean, we know that like most of the Caribbean, like the high season is like you said, like winter.
Yeah, it's like November
but
to March.
Okay, yeah.
December, January are really, really busy months, and they're also kind of the nicest months. So it's hot all year round. It's around 28 all year round. In December and January there's a bit of a breeze, so it feels a little bit cooler. Yeah. And actually in January there was about a week where I was walking around in long trousers because it was like under 26 Celsius, which feels really cold. Yeah. For the rest of the time it's just shorts and flip-flops.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But we were like, oh my god, it's freezing.
Yeah, I don't. I don't have to.
And then September is the worst month.
Why?
Because it's hurricane season above us, and that means all the wind gets pulled that way, and it's dead still here. So it's 28 degrees and high humidity.
That's interesting because my sister-in-law was asking if you get a lot of hurricanes here, and like I know that they all kind of go this way, and you're like over here. So, but I never thought about all the wind getting sucked out.
Gets sucked up.
Yeah.
But for the rest of the year, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're out of the hurricane belt, which is nice. The weather's always good.
Yeah.
If it rains in the night or in the morning. So it's usually before. It doesn't rain during the day that often.
That's so funny.
Yeah, which is quite nice. And if it does rain during the day, it cools off nicely.
Yeah.
Which is also good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's direct flights from Canada.
Yeah.
And I'm not far from the airport.
You're not far from the airport. Where is that? Because that's where our bus was going. Right there. Okay.
Yeah, so like 10-minute drive.
Okay.
So you essentially drive past us if you go towards Punda or Toronto.
And you can get a bus because
yeah.
the bus goes from the airport back the way we came and it drops off. So yeah. Well, we talked a little bit about the like the beers you make, but like these other places, what kind of beers are they doing? Like, are they kind of targeting the market, or like, do you feel like you're all doing the same thing, or?
No, not at all.
Okay.
A little bit about Tiki Mas Serbes. We make 3 different IPAs. We have a stout, we have a pale ale, and we are the first brewery to make sours on the island. Something I really enjoy drinking is like a really nice crisp sour, especially in this weather. Swinging Old Lady does a little bit more of everything. So we have 6, they have 9, I think, 9 different beers. They have an IPA, they do a Witbier, a triple, a porter, testing my knowledge here, I'm not really sure. And then a couple of other things. They have done a sour, but it's not something that they continued with. Then one of them's on there is Co-Made, a restaurant. They do like a saison, they kind of brew different things. So they have a saison, a blonde, hazy IPA, and then something else that they always rotate between. Then Sunport, they do more Dutch, Belgian, German style beers. So they're a lot more like wheaty, that kind of wheat beers and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Pierre's Brauhaus, which is the other one, does a lot more Belgian stuff.
Okay.
So they have a triple, quadruple, a blonde ale, like a Belgian blonde. And they use fake yeast because for fermentation here, that's perfect. Belgian style beers aren't usually my favorite because of the yeastiness.
Me too.
But his beers are really good because they don't have that yeastiness because it's not using a Belgian yeast. So it's kind of in the style of.
Okay.
Probably more.
Okay.
And in Montana does an IPA, a stout, a red ale, a fruit beer, and lagers. A lot more.
Okay.
They're by far the biggest brewery on the islands. They have a couple of 6,000 litre fermentation tanks. So they're a lot bigger.
Okay.
A lot bigger volume.
Oh yeah, that's okay.
Talking about more like 30 barrels, something like that, like big.
Yeah, I used to brew 10 barrel and our fermenters were like 1,200 liters. So that's like 5 times the size.
Yeah.
Almost, yeah, that's pretty big.
Yeah, so they're a lot bigger. And they're a lot more readily available. So they're in all of the supermarkets, all of the Chinese supermarkets as well, and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
All bars. They're at all-inclusive hotels on tap and that kind of stuff.
That's cool.
Yeah, we've had the owner, Ivan, is a really friendly guy and really willing to help with other breweries as well, which is nice.
So again, Jon is awesome for being a good support and doing that for us. And I wanted to kind of get the word out about his brand and his brewery because, like he said, it's hard to do everything when you're on your own. If you're the brewer and the delivery person and billing and accounts receivable, all that stuff, and you're by yourself, it's hard to do all of the extra marketing as well and put like the money towards that. So, I mean, if you happen to be in Curaçao, I would say this is probably should be your first stop if you're a beer fan. And then I'll kind of tell you about the other ones that we did that he suggested. So just a really great place, great beer, great guy. So thank you again, Jon. And like I said before, Jon offered to drive us back to town. So he had to stop at a grocery store first, which I always love going to grocery stores in different places because I don't know, I like to see like what the prices are, what kind of produce they have, just what sort of products they carry, and obviously beer, So we went to the grocery store and I went to the beer section and I already knew I was going to buy beer and just try to either slip it in or declare it when I got back on the ship. So I was prepared. But it was really helpful to have Jon there because they had a pretty large selection, I thought, and a lot of it was from Europe because they had a lot of brands from the Netherlands and Belgium, which I'd never seen or heard of. So I just bought stuff again based on like what the label looked like. And then if there was a style that I just typically enjoy, like an IPA. So, I grabbed some of those. So I'm going to show you which beers I got, and then in a little bit I'm going to taste one. Okay, so beer number one. This one some of you might have seen or are familiar with. It's an IPA. It is from Belgium. And if you can kind of see up here, you might see that it says Duvel. So that is a pretty well-known brewery. And this is sort of like their craft division. And I don't know anything about it. It just says extra IPA. And one thing I will say though is that I went online to do a little bit of research, and I would say just go to this website. You can go to Duvel, and then there's a section to click for this Vedette, I want to say, and it'll take you to that website. And it's just a really cool website. It's really artsy and like quirky, so just do that. This one I had to get because I feel like if I'm getting a Belgian beer, I have to get like a typical Belgian style. So this is a double, and I'm probably going to say it wrong, but it's called Brugesot. Again, don't know a lot about it, but I was like, oh, there's a little joker on there, so I don't know. That must be fun. Yep. This one I bought because, again, like look at that label. This is, it's hard to see, Stadshaven, and there's a little eel on it, and it's an IPA. This one is from, I had a list written down and I forgot. This is from Rotterdam in the Netherlands, and it says is got tangerine and carambola. And if you don't know what carambola is, maybe this helps. But that's what they call star fruit in the Caribbean. So I don't know. I thought that sounded kind of fun and citrusy. It's got an anchor on the label. I like anchors, so I don't know. This is how I buy stuff. And then this one, Lowlander. Which maybe you've guessed is from the Netherlands. So Netherlands itself actually means lowlands. So it's a Witbier, and it's got a little polar bear on it, so I thought that was cute. I don't typically enjoy Witbier styles. It's the yeast. I just don't like the esters that it gives off. However, this one says it's brewed with Curaçao orange, elderflower, and chamomile. So I have brewed with elderflower before, and I really liked it. I like chamomile tea, so okay, there's that. But then also Curaçao orange, which is normally when people think of Curaçao, they think of the liqueur. They think of it's dyed blue, so it's called blue Curaçao. But they have non-blue color. They have different flavors now. So that is the fruit that is used in that liqueur. So I thought that would be interesting. So this is the one I'm going to try in a little bit, because the other ones my husband was more interested in trying as well. So I wanted to drink one that maybe he wouldn't be as upset about missing. So I'm going to try that in a little bit. Actually, maybe I should just try it now. I have my little alligator bottle opener and one of my favorite beer glasses from Green Cheek in California. So let's see. I would say too, Lowlander, I went to that website and it was beautiful. It was just really heavy on the botanical aspect, and just their art was just beautiful. And so I'm also kind of hoping that I don't like any of these beers because I won't be able to get them again. So we'll see. Here we go. So that's got a pretty nice clarity, for a Witbier. If you're not sure of what a Witbier style is, think of, you could say a Blue Moon, which is a Belgian wheat kind of, or a Hoegaarden. Yeah, wit basically means white. So it's a white beer. It's got wheat, but it usually has orange peel and maybe some spice in it. So smelling this, it's got nice carbonation. It's got a pretty nice head. It's weird. It smells like a lager to me. I'm not getting like those esters. Like I'm not getting the orange. I'm not getting maybe even like the banana-y flavors, aromas. Interesting. As every car in my neighborhood drives by. Uh, it's really light. It's really nicely carbonated, so it just kind of like explodes in your mouth. But I want to say it almost tastes like soapy or perfumey. And soapy is an off flavor, and it's a flaw. But I don't mean soapy in that way. I mean it like just floral and like fresh and just interesting. I don't think I get any orange coming out. That's interesting. I like that, sadly. I like that. Yeah, that's like a pretty clean um, beer. I would say I wish I was drinking this if it was like warmer out and I was like somewhere warm or maybe even tropical, but I live where I live. So this is really nice. So I'm gonna sip on this while I talk about the other breweries we went to. Okay. So I had asked Jon about other beer uh, recommendations, other breweries, and he named a couple. And one of them, my brother had actually seen while we were sort of like in the area in town. And so it's called Swinging Old Lady. Yes. And so Jon was telling us kind of the history about this brewery, and one thing that's nice that I was glad to see where he is in Curaçao is that the brewing community is still kind of small. Even the larger breweries and the smaller breweries, everyone sort of chats and helps each other out, if they need ingredients or they have questions or they're troubleshooting. So he knows pretty much all the people that brew on the island. And, the island itself is maybe 100, what did I have? 156,000 people. So, it's the size of a larger city, the whole island, but there's maybe like 6 breweries, something like that. So it's really not a lot. Anyway, I digress. So he was telling us about this brewery and their beer. And again, it was Sunday, so this was pretty much the only place that was open, and where we could go and try a beer. So, Swinging Old Lady. If you're wondering where that name comes from, you'll remember at the beginning of the video I talked about the bridge that swings open, and it's named after Queen Emma. So that's the Swinging Old Lady is the bridge. So that's why it's called Swinging Old Lady Brewery. In any case, I thought it was awesome. So 8 beers on tap. My husband wanted to try the hazy. The bartender said they didn't have it on tap, and my first thought was, well, that's usually a popular style, so that makes sense. Like it's off and whatever. And then he said, yeah, it'll probably be a few months before it's back on tap. And I just kind of thought that was interesting because I don't know why it would take that long. So we didn't get to try it. So he had just a West Coast IPA, and I had a black rye IPA. Yeah, the rye IPA was not bad. The West Coast, I think, had some issues, so that was disappointing. But again, we're there for the experience, and we want to see, what the vibe is like, what the culture's like. So, it is what it is. The actual building is beautiful. I think it used to be a hotel and many other things at some point because it's been around for a long time. It's right on the water. Like it's just a really nice place to sit and like people watch or just be out in the sun. Another really cool thing is that you can actually go inside and you walk down this little hallway and you can see the actual brewery with the fermenters, and it's like beautiful. It's super clean. It's a nice system. Everything is like set up logically, which doesn't often happen in breweries. And so I just really liked looking at that because I like to see what other people like how they work and like what their space is like. So I thought that was kind of neat. You can go and like look through the doors and see that. So yeah, we went to Sweet and Old Lady. And then we went to, well, we didn't go to this brewery, but there's another really large brewery on the island called Montana. And it's named after the Montana neighborhood. I'm not sure why the neighborhood is called Montana, other than maybe it has to do with mountains, like Spanish montaña. So they're like the largest producer, let's say, on the island. So they're at a lot of the hotels and the restaurants and in the stores and things like that. So they're kind of like ubiquitous in the area. So we were walking back to get onto the ship, and there's all these little kind of like touristy shops or like, shacks or whatever. And there was a guy that had Montana beer on tap in his jockey box. So it was like $5, and I was like, yeah, sure, okay, like $5 with the tip. So I was like, why not? Let's just try it. So, so I tried that. It was a blonde. It tasted like a blonde. It just was pretty generic. I did not make like any notes about it. I can't really tell you much more than that because it was not super memorable, other than I remember where I was when I drank it. That's it. So yeah. And then there were other breweries that we didn't get to, of course, because of time or day of the week or etc. So, maybe in the future when I go back, I'd like to try them. I'm gonna take a sip because I really like this. Maybe if all Belgian Witbier tasted like this, I would drink more of it. But a lot of it doesn't. So yeah, we didn't get to do the more touristy things in Curaçao, like the beaches. But this is definitely a place where I would like to go back to. I'd been there once before, but I think I was in like late high school, so I had to be with a parent and I wasn't drinking. So now I've seen another part of it, and then I'd like to go back and see like another part of it. So I would definitely say, like, if you're looking at the Caribbean, definitely put this little island chain on your list, especially since they're all so close together. Um, what else? I want to thank Jon again for taking time to like sit and hang out with us. Definitely look him up on Facebook and Instagram, Tiki Mas Serbes. Um, yeah, so just to recap it up, always check where you're going and what your bus schedule is. Things change, or they're not very clear. Definitely get out of the port area if you are looking for like something like authentic. And that's another reason I like taking public transit, because you're not just on another tourist bus with a bunch of other tourists. You're on a bus with real people that live there, and you're driving through these neighborhoods, and it's like a sightseeing tour on its own. Check out the local craft breweries. They're there. Surprisingly, there are more and more. So, you're probably going to find one wherever you are. Wow, it just got windy. Um, and just enjoy yourselves. Just like be in the moment. Even if the beer is not super amazing, it's where you are, it's who you're with, it's the whole experience. So next time, my next video, I'm going to be talking about our stop in Cartagena, Colombia. I have some beer from there. And I just want to say again, thank you for joining me on this, like, thing I just thought I would start doing one day in January, start YouTubing. If you want to share, that would be great. I appreciate it. I appreciate your comments. I like reading, what you think, or, what your thoughts are. And I'd also love to hear if you've ever been to Curaçao and tried any of these beers that I've just talked about. Yeah, so thanks for being here. Cheers.